Theodore. He's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Bodak, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.
Theodore was watching George pull Shelburne the sea barge out of the big harbor. "How far are you going with Shelburne?" asked Theodore.
"All the way to the other side of the ocean," replied George.
"How far is that?" said Theodore.
"Oh, really far," answered George.
Theodore knew he couldn't leave the harbor like George. You see, George was an ocean tug, and Theodore was still a harbor tug. "I bet I could go across the ocean," Theodore called to George. "One day."
"Maybe," shouted George, and he turned toward the open ocean.
"One day," repeated Theodore softly. "One day."
Well, this brings up an interesting question. Where exactly was George going with Shelburne? Kind of wish they would have elaborated a bit more on that. And by the way, something I didn't mention. Who exactly is Shelburne? He's this brand new barge that just appeared from nowhere, it seems. And he's barely said 2 words. Maybe we'll find out a bit more on him. I don't know. Anyway, during the morning meeting the following day, the dispatcher needed a tug to bring a new bell to a bell buoy named Blandford out on the ocean. And guess who got picked for the job?
"Theodore, please leave immediately."
"Me?" said Theodore, turning to the dispatcher. "But I'm not an ocean tug."
"I know, Theodore," said the dispatcher. "But you have been doing many important jobs around the harbor lately, and one day you will become an ocean tugboat. This little trip will be your first step, float, so to speak."
Theodore didn't say anything. He couldn't say anything. His engine felt like it was going too fast, though he wasn't moving at all.
"You'll do fine, Theodore," concluded the dispatcher. "Just remember to hug the coast."
"Hug the coast? Does that mean I have to give the coast a hug?"
No. I meant just stay close to the coast."
You don't have to give the coast a hug, but I certainly want to hug you after that precious moment. At least they're starting to acknowledge that Theodore wants to be an ocean tug and are giving him some jobs to chase after his dream. So this is a good beginning for him. So Theodore collects the bell and heads off to the ocean. On the way, he passed by Bedford, who was curious to see what Theodore was up to.
"Theodore, where are you going?" "Oh, I'm an ocean tug now," called Theodore. "That's great," said Bedford. "How far are you going?" Theodore didn't answer Bedford. He was too excited. "I hope we'll still be friends when you get back," Bedford called quietly. Theodore hurried along. With each drum of his engine, he knew he was going further and further from the harbor. "I wonder how far I am now," he wondered. Theodore gazed back at the big harbor. Somehow, it had never seemed so small before, and somehow he had never felt so big.
Yes, and it also seems like Theodore is about to get a little too big for his bumpers again. You know, there's things called baby steps. You don't need to rush into something not knowing what's gonna happen. But none of that mattered to the young tug as he continued on his way along the coast.
"Look at that strange twisted tree," he said. Everything was so new and different than the same old harbor things he always saw. "What a red rock," he said to himself. He saw a small fishing boat who lived in the cove. "Hello," he called to the boat. "I'm Theodore."
"I'm Fundy, the fishing trawler,"
replied the boat in a very deep voice.
"I live here in this cove."
"I live in the big harbor," smiled Theodore. "But I'm going out on the ocean. I'll probably be going all the way across soon."
"The ocean wasn't filled in a day,"
said Fundy in his deep voice. And then he was silent again. "This boat says strange things," Theodore murmured. He rumbled his engine because because he wanted to get going. Well, he said at last, I better be leaving for the ocean. I'm in a hurry.
So, we're introduced to our first new character, Fundy. He seems like a pretty cool character. Some of the things he says are pretty strange, but they do have some deep meanings behind them. Don't know exactly how long he'll stay in the series, but we'll see. Also, some of these coastal shots are really nice. Hope we get to see more of that. So Theodore said goodbye and continued out towards the ocean. Soon enough, he came upon Blandford.
Hello, he called to Blandford. I'm Theodore, the new ocean tug, and I brought your new bell.
Many thanks, said Blandford. Haven't seen you out here before.
Oh, you'll probably be seeing a lot of me, said Theodore. I'll be going across the ocean soon. That's because I'm the new ocean tug.
Do you know Bedford Bowie?
He's a friend of mine, said Blandford.
Sure, replied Theodore.
But he just lives in the harbor. I probably won't see him much anymore, since I'll be out on the ocean most of the time. Theodore turned to head back home, and that's when he saw a surprising sight. There, not too far away, was Owen, the giant oil rig. Well, what's Owen doing out here? Asked Theodore.
That's where he works, replied Blandford.
So that's where Owen goes when he's not in the harbor, said Theodore. Well, Theodore knew he was only supposed to go as far as Blandford, but the thought of visiting Owen made his engine skip a beat.
And we're introduced to our second character, Blandford. Don't know what to really make of him just yet, other than he's just an ocean buoy. But yeah, sure, only supposed to go to Blandford, but decides to go out further to visit Owen. And who said you were automatically an ocean tug after this job? Damn it, Theodore! Patience! But Theodore set off for Owen, who seemed a lot farther than he was.
If that isn't Theodore Tugboat, boomed the big rig. Yes, sirree, Bob. Well, what are you doing way out here?
Oh, puffed Theodore. Just being the new ocean tug.
Ocean tug? Hey, isn't that something? Oh, yes, indeedy do. Great being out here on the ocean, isn't it? So nice and quiet.
Theodore grinned. It certainly wasn't quiet anywhere Owen was around.
Nothing like the ocean for adventures, Owen continued. Why, I remember the time I was drilling out here for oil and I dug up a giant octopus.
Well, I remember the time that I
brought Blandford a new bell.
Well, those two began to talk, and somehow the time just seemed to slip by.
I would have believed that the time slipped more if it wasn't already sunset by the time Theodore arrived at Owen. And I just love how Theodore is really trying to keep level with Owen on the whole ocean story topic. Well, as the two talked, it began to get dark, and Theodore started for home. But then he realized he had no idea where the harbor was.
I think, said Theodore to himself, I think I've gone too far. Theodore didn't know his way home. The water under his hull felt deeper. All around him, he saw nothing but ocean. Did the ocean suddenly get bigger? He wondered. That ship must be going toward the harbor. Theodore turned to start following the ship.
Theodore?
It was Owen again.
If you're going to the harbor, it's the other way,
Owen hollered. Oh, that ship must be going further out on the ocean, said Theodore.
Yes, sirree, Bob,
boomed Owen. I didn't know the ocean was so big, he said softly. I hope I can find my way home.
Well, that's what you get for jumping into something you weren't entirely ready for. It's only your first ocean job, and there are plenty more you still need to learn. No rushing these things. Well, Theodore headed back towards Blandford and asked him directions to the harbor. The bell buoy reminded him to hug the coast, just as the dispatcher had told him. He then arrived back at the cove where Fundy was.
If a tug goes a-travelin', he won't come home a supertanker,
Fundy said in his deep, deep voice. I wonder, Theodore thought to himself, if Fundy means that I should go home the same way I came. Theodore looked along the coast and saw a red rock, and beyond it, the giant twisted tree. "I know that rock," he said. "I passed it on the way here." Theodore set off towards the rock. "Hug the coast, and I'll soon be home," Theodore repeated to himself. Oh, how terrific those things looked to Theodore. Even better than the first time he saw them. Somehow, he didn't really know why, but Theodore had the feeling that while he was hugging the coast, that coast was hugging him right back. And that was a nice feeling. A feeling of being safe. Safe and almost home.
And that's why it's important to mark off the little things. Had Theodore not remembered the rockin' tree, he may have been stuck out there for a while. Which is a bit weird because why didn't the dispatcher call him on the radio or have someone go and look for him at this point? Who knows. Well, now that Theodore was finally safe at home, he was greeted by a very familiar bell buoy to close things out.
"Bedford," he shouted. "I saw a twisted tree, a giant rock, and a funny fishing boat, and Owen was there, and a ship was leaving for the ocean, and Blandford says hello." The words came tumbling out of Theodore's mouth so fast he didn't even have time to stop for a breath. "Oh, it sounds great," said Bedford. Theodore stopped. It had been kind of great, but it also felt so good to be back in the big harbor. He looked at his good friend, Bedford. "You know," said Theodore, "the greatest thing I saw all day was you, Bedford." "I missed you too, Theodore," said Bedford. "I guess next time you'll go really far." "Oh," smiled Theodore, "maybe just a little way at a time." "That's okay, isn't it, Theodore?" said Bedford. "It sure is, Bedford," smiled Theodore. "It sure is."
Wait. I'm sorry. Before I end this off, I just gotta ask, do any of you guys see exactly what I'm seeing?
What the fuck?
And that concludes Theodore Hugs the Coast. This was another really good one. I really do like the overall morals they tried to approach here. That being to take things a little ways at a time and landmarking your directions. While it was nice to see Theodore beginning his first steps to becoming an ocean tug, we all know he wasn't exactly full-on ready. And thus he got himself lost thinking he was ready to handle the wide open ocean. At least he knows not to rush into things now. Other than that, viewers are introduced to Fundy the fishing boat and Blandford Buoy. Again, they seem like interesting characters, just not sure how long they'll stick around for. But the voices that Denny provides for them are kind of funny, but they do seem to fit. And of course, we had little cameos from Owen and Bedford again, which was nice. Music-wise was pretty good this time round. The one that really stood out was that sort of jazzy little theme to Theodore, which is pretty awesome to listen to. And for visuals, while they may have started in the harbor, our main focus was the coastline where Fundy lived, and the open ocean where Blandford and Owen resided. It's looking to be a very promising season. Next up is Hank's Hiccups.